Steve, I'm the MD of Executive Connexions. So we're in the career coaching space. So unlike a recruiter who's working for their client, we're working for you, if you like. You know, if you've got your candidate hat on, work with a lot of people in the finance space actually, and people come to us a couple of different ways. It may be an organization that's having to unfortunately let someone go, so they'll be supporting that person with our kind of services, or the person might come to us directly themselves. And we do this kind of work in lots of different locations. I've got coaching teams, sort of in the US as well as the UK and other locations as well. And this series of videos, it's been a series of videos or presentations, and we've been running them for a few weeks now, and they've covered things like CV, LinkedIn profile, interview skills, interview practice, that kind of thing. And those are all there available. So if any subjects are really of interest to you, just give me a shout and I can get those to you anyway. Going forward, we're going to carry on doing them, but we're going to try using the LinkedIn audio event feature after the last one of these is going to be in a couple of weeks' time. So you're welcome to that one. It'll be like a round robin of everything we've done so far, so it might be a good one to attend anyway. But following that, we'll be moving on to these audio events, which I think gives people the chance to kind of speak up, and they don't have to feel they need to be on camera if they don't want to be. So some people that we've worked with here, and I'm seeing this on a nice big screen. I don't know about you, but I can see, I've got a couple of CFOs in there. There are certainly more, and we work with people across a lot of different ranges, typically sort of 3 to 6 months, something like that. A lot of recruiters tell me that the job search timeline is stretching out into the distance a bit these days, but I try and hold on that that's not the case for most people, and fingers crossed with that. So yeah, so this is a really strong, important subject, I think, and it underpins everything we do, certainly as a coaching company anyway, because it's the resilience piece and the ability to bounce back and the positive mindset and so on. They're all just lines that people have been throwing around for a long, long time. But I think post-COVID and maybe a bit before with Brexit and all the angst that everyone had about that. So a few years now, we've had this kind of angsty period, I think, and it's built up. And I think in the job search now, it's making people quite anxious about what's out there in the market. So this is just a bit about a couple of tips and a couple of takeaways in terms of, I would say, chiefly mindset, essentially. So rather than saying, positive, negative, growth mindset is all about just that shift. I think in the way that you're thinking now, just in terms of what people do about this, there's lots of different ways that people, I think one of the future slides talks about mindfulness and things like this. I don't know if you do anything like that yourself, but certainly, personally wise, I make sure I do. I'm doing some form of meditation every day, even if it's only a couple of minutes. I think everyone should be doing a lot more of that these days anyway. But this is about talking about just in whatever way you can foster it, having that growth mindset. The recordings will come out to you in any event, so you don't have to worry about thinking what everything that's on every screen here. Sometimes I speak to what's on the screen. Sometimes I speak to a couple of words that are on the screen. Again, it's one of those, the headline really is, it's one of those things where I say, well, easier said than done, isn't it? It is kind of just go out and develop resilience. So yeah, I think how do we do it? So I've talked a little bit there about stress management techniques, mindfulness, and so on. I've heard people talk about, and I've certainly got into it a bit more, where you can get into different breathing techniques as well. If you're going in for an interview, there's kind of a long, slow exhale breath. There's a box breathing where you kind of in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, and keep going in. These are all things that have been scientifically proven to just put us in a calmer and actually more focused place. So just a couple of things I would suggest, but those things aren't for everybody, and everyone's got to do their own thing that's going to actually make sure they get in that place of strong resilience. I think adaptability is really important. We work with some people and they may have worked for the same company for 20 years. So their expectations might be they're just going to walk into a new role. And when they see what the market is like out there these days, quite tough, lots of candidates, lots of competition. They can start to get a little bit angsty and desperate and needy and pushy and all those kinds of things that recruiters and hiring managers just don't want to see, really. I think again that's just echoing the mindset, I think, of a growth mindset. Um, I read a book a million years ago that talked about, problem solving, and that the definition there was thinking. Thinking is problem solving. I know you need to expand on that a bit sometimes, but it is just about going through processes that will help you to come up with the best solution, in terms of turning that challenge into an opportunity. And I can't reiterate it too many times, really, that it does come down to mindset. I know many people, myself included, that if you're dipping in and out of mindfulness, it's one of those things. If you do it regularly, it can start to have an effect over time. And I think it really does help a lot of people. So you've probably heard of EQ, or emotional intelligence. I think there's been enough statistics these days to say that anyone who's on an even keel academically, if one person's got higher emotional intelligence, that person will do better in the workplace, typically. And the second point on the left about being aware, I think that's one of the key things. Again, you can do a lot of reading on this subject, where if you start getting a negative internal voice coming into you, you're talking to yourself, you're talking yourself down, just actually recognizing that that's happening is step number one. And then there are ways and means to actually address that, and start to turn it around into more of a positive mindset. But you're basically aware of the basic concepts of emotional intelligence, I would.
Yeah, I've been in, reading the Stephen Covey literature, and I think it's one of those things which is, I think for me certainly has been like a slow burn, a slow reveal. Like, every time I kind of revisit it, I understand it a little bit better.
Yeah, it's kind of just it's almost like a mindset, I think, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah.
well, how do I know? I mean, I won't. There's a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0, which I bought it. I bought it a little while back, actually, through Amazon, and most of it reads like a glossary of terms, but in the back, and the reason I bought it was that it gives you a code where you can do an EQ test a couple of times, and you can sort of give yourself a month or two in between, but I think it can help, a lot of people. It can just be simple things, like people talk about active listening. What's active listening? It's not just for coaches. It's listening in a way that is really engaging with the person, and not just waiting for them to stop so you can get your bit in, which is just perhaps quite a natural, human thing to do.
Mm.
So yeah, I think slow burn is good, and it's the way to do it. And then you take away bits that just help you to sort of develop your own personal and professional practice as well. When I talk about networks quite a bit as well, again, whether someone's an introvert or extrovert, they tend to network in different ways, and they like networking events, or they just don't like networking events. Face-to-face ones, I mean, that still exist. But certainly, I think that just making sure, if you have a network, that you just keep once a month. If it's LinkedIn we're talking about here, which I guess it is as a tool. Hi, Steve, haven't been in touch for a while. How's things in your world at the moment? If that was a peer to you, let's say, for example, and that could just be like a quarterly diarized thing to do. Why do that? Because when someone's then all of a sudden in a job search scenario, and they want to pull in a couple of, not so much pull in favors, but you get me. You're asking the ability to ask a favor of someone. You haven't not been in touch with that person for like a year or two. I think it's part of professional practice again. When someone, particularly whether it's busy finance role, you've got an audit, you've got this, that, and the other, that's going to be kind of really taking your attention. But having, an hour a week for a bit of networking, and once a quarter for a bit of keeping in touch and growing. I didn't say growing your network as well, because people will keep their network as they're existing. And when it comes to job search, just outside that sort of comfort zone, if you like. That's, I think, where a lot of the best opportunities are as well. The unadvertised opportunities, or the ones that don't just get across many people's radar. But I'm going off to the hidden jobs market now, so we're talking about that another point. But yeah, I think I'm recognizing and appreciating. Again, going back to LinkedIn, you've got a mechanism there for requesting and giving recommendations as well. In my experience, people like to reciprocate. So if you give out a couple first, hopefully you'll get a couple back. So I put those two green bits of text there because those to me, you may disagree, but those to me are the two big takeaways when someone's talking about navigating setbacks and moving forward in their career or their professional, their professional life. It's having that reflection. Maybe you grab that book I mentioned, maybe we have a chat, maybe you attend a few networking events, maybe you speak to a few new people, get a feel for what's happening, in the market. And I think that's what helps us all get through this world that we live in at the moment. Those links should be in the chat, but again, this is for the purpose of the recording, that we get HR people that view the recordings also, and they come in on a different link if they want to book some time with me. Anyone who's in the job seeking category would be the top link. So that will be, as I say, in the chat anyway, and we can talk about that if you're interested at any point. So just sort of bear with this. We've kind of changed our sequence from being weekly. Next week, there will be a gap. The last one of these events, which will be this, as it says there, this kind of toolkit where we'll cover, a bit about personal branding, CVs, the hidden jobs market. So it'll be a real kind of round robin overview, and you're more than welcome to attend that. What's going to happen then after that, we're going to sort of move to a midday slot. A lot to remember here, I appreciate, but the recording will reiterate, obviously. Just to try a different time slot and see how that works for people. We realize that we're kind of excluding a few people here, the school runs and all the rest of that. So yeah, we try different times occasionally. So there we go. I'll stop the share. So what did you think of that?
Yeah, I really liked it, Steve, and Dorcas has put the link as well in the chat. So
Thanks,
I've just clicked on that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's I think one of the interesting things when you're asking about the EQ, and I've recently just read a book about PQ, positive intelligence, which is looking at, I don't know if you've read that book.
Yes. No, I haven't. I'm interested in that.
It's really interesting. It's looking at things which are saboteurs, so judgment, those sorts of things, and how you cultivate the ability to kind of strengthen yourself against being sabotaged by yourself. And I think it's
what was that called again? Sorry, Rachel.
Positive intelligence.
Yeah, I'll definitely give that a look at.
And it's interesting because you mentioned the kind of quiz to be able to see where you are and that kind of stuff, and that's also got that on the website. And
gotcha.
I think I'm one of these people who sometimes falls into the trap of absorbing lots of information, but the key thing is putting it into practice.
Right. Okay.
I think there's something about putting it into practice. I think just in terms of the topic of setbacks, what's been interesting as you were talking, I was kind of sort of reflecting. I don't think I ever had a real career plan. I think I've kind of, but one of the other things is I think confidence sometimes comes into this, but also perspective. Is my view of the setback the same as anybody else's view? And the likelihood is that those two are very different. And I think the last thing, which I think you probably could really, really help with, Steve, is being able to communicate that in a way which feels obviously kind of truthful, authentic, but is putting it away which is kind of attractive and listenable and understandable and resonates, rather than you're just trying to dump, your past information. So it is trying to kind of like put into practice the growth mindset, but also to be able to communicate in a way that demonstrates, but also with perspective. I think sometimes things happen as you go along your career, and it hits you harder than probably anybody else would.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. And by the way, I mean, we can talk about anything, but I didn't make the point at the end, and I usually do, that despite the presentation being on a given subject, questions or discussion can be around any subject. So yeah, well, to do with job search, probably as far as my remit goes. But yeah, there's a couple of things you mentioned there, and I think that around being authentic is very true. Something stuck with me a few weeks ago, and I was talking about preparing for interviews, and I've talked to my team about this as well when they're working with clients in job interview preparation. It isn't just about getting all the words in order and all the enthusiasm and so on. It's also speaking from the heart as well. Someone pointed out to me, and that kind of resonated to me as well. Having that nice kind of mix, I think, is really important. So there is a degree of spontaneity there, but I do believe that confidence comes from, if you're able to articulate your value proposition in a really compelling way. So authentic, as you say, on one hand, but compelling, and it's a sales meeting after all, an interview on the other hand. How many hands have I got? So yeah, I think that's the balance. It's like an actor would prepare their lines basically, but then when it comes to the real thing, you're not just sounding like you're reading out something you've memorized. You've kind of practiced it so much that you are, that it's just natural, at the end of the day. And then you can relax, and you can if it's an interview situation, you can pop into the ladies, do some deep breathing, do whatever it is beforehand that's going to help as well. Everyone's different on that front. People manifest, nerves and things in different ways. So we kind of talk about that. But yeah, the whole career plan piece, I think, is well, obviously is what we do. But some people might be saying, right, I've left this role, I'm now looking for something exactly the same. So it's kind of refinement, CV, bit of LinkedIn, maybe a bit of interview, etc., practice. But we also work with plenty of people where preceding all those, there would be like a blank sheet of paper discussion, I would call it, around career path, 5 years. Are there objectives? If there aren't, let's talk about what some could be. Where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years time? What sort of role would you see yourself in? Would you be in a role at that point? What would you be doing? Would you be doing some interim and non-execs at that point, or do you want to do that now? This is not coaching, but there's a lot of different possibilities, and I think doing that conversation at the front end is really important, just to make sure that the path that's set is exactly what you want it to be, in a career sense. But yeah, putting things into action, again, it's not platitudes, I assure you, Rachel. You're not alone in terms of putting things into action. I talk about it a lot. I've talked about it for years, actually, where I've spoken to plenty of people where we've had to push back a bit more, where, oh yeah, I know all about, I know LinkedIn, I know you need to do this and do that. Yeah, but have you actually done it? And so on. So it's so easy to get knowledge now, isn't it?
In this day and age, yeah, it's
and you can
hard not to absorb it in some ways, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but I think action's the thing, and I think that's where a human being, in terms of a coach or mentor or friend or anybody, still has a place with AI and everything else, because the human input and the assistance with the implementation, that's where the human bit comes in. I think the kind of being a cheerleader one day and being a bit of a kind of counseling head the other day, and it's having that flow throughout someone's job search journey, however long that takes. There's going to be good days, bad days. At the front end, I think, apart from that blank sheet of paper discussion, I think it's just as much about making sure you've got all your call them like assets, your CV, and your
Yeah.
LinkedIn page. Anything that could do with a refresh, get a refresh, and then start having those conversations about what are you doing in terms of your own networking. How do you feel about networking? What are your strategies around expanding your network? What do you like at interviews? What do you think you're good at, not so good at? Doing a little bit of a, probably similar to this, doing a little bit of a sort of
Yeah.
just
Like a role play practice.
do the tell me about yourself bit,
Yeah.
start there, and then, yeah, because we're not going to ask you about, IFRS or SOX audits or something. We're not
Oh,
not
good.
qualified. No, it's just I wouldn't want to either. But it's just really to get your, are the answers too long, too short? Do you sound, strategic enough as a leader? That kind of.
Yeah, and I think that sort of kind of help and guidance and practice, more importantly, I think is just what I need. Yeah, I'm a bit fearful of interviews because I've not been doing that practice, and therefore probably the performance has not been as good as, it's not reflective. I don't think so. Oh yeah, I think the presentation content was great. I think to remember to be mindful, I think is another great one, because that goes out the window as well sometimes. But
Yes.
yeah, I will definitely schedule a call with you if that's okay,
Yeah,
Steve.
no,
Yeah,
no
I
problem.
think it
Please do.
sounds just
Please.
what I need, and I'll definitely be attending your wrap up on the 10th of July.
Okay, that's perfect. Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Thanks for turning up. I'm really glad you did.
Oh,
You've made
I'm
me
really
more
glad I
happy now.
did. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All the best. Take care.
Brilliant.
I'll speak to you soon
Take,
then.
take care. Thanks, Steve.
All right. Bye for now.